Welcome back. You're watching SA Today. Now, this week, the Department of Basic Education released the results of the Teaching and Learning International Survey of 2018. The report pointed to some significant concerns about the state of teaching and learning in the country. And to tell us more about these findings, as well as what we can expect in education in the next few years, I'm now joined by recently reappointed Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Minister. Welcome to the program.
No, thank you very much for having me.
All right, so it's been an important week. This TALIS report comes out, and people use this to either continue to feed a narrative that they already have in their minds. And it came out, we were compared to a number of countries around the world. What's your first take of what the results said to you?
It's a very important study. It's a rigorous research, so it's very scientific. And what is nice about it, for the first time, we are able to just get a sense of where we stand against the world. It reaffirmed some of the things that we know, but for me, it also raised other areas where I was not sure about the information, and I think was heartening. But what is also very helpful about the study, it's even the items to say, if you have to, because we do our own internal research, if you have to do a survey on teachers, these are some of the key questions that you need to probe for you to get some samples. So it's very helpful in terms of research, ongoing research, but also because it's a very scientific report. But more important, it's the teachers themselves about teaching, which is normally not the case. We get anecdotal reports, but that teachers say. But here it's teachers themselves saying whatever they're saying.
So what worried you the most here?
What
worried you the most about what came through in the report?
It reconfirms what we know, so I was not shocked at all. It's just that it's very depressing again to see your ugly your drugs, your crime in schools, the vandalism, but it's things that we know as a country. So I wouldn't say worried, but it just is some of those disheartening experiences that we have, and it just reconfirms them.
Okay, we'll use the report a little bit to help us discuss the state of schools and education at the moment, and then start to talk about what's coming in the future. I was quite surprised when I saw that 60% of our teachers are female, but only 22% are principals. Why is that?
No, it's an old problem that we, on an ongoing basis, confront. Teaching is like all your social science areas. They are female, I think because of patriarchy, that women are more caring, or even the young women themselves choose to go into teaching. But when you get now into leadership, then that's where patriarchy comes in, and men would really go for the most powerful. And so it's also not a shock. That's what we know in the system.
Are you unable to intervene as the
No, we are
minister?
intervening.
Okay.
We are intervening. We make sure that in terms of even your structures that are there, we look at the equity. But again, education is an old system. We don't go in and say we want women now, men go out. You have to phase them out with time and make sure that as you make new appointments, you begin to correct that which you found. So some of the principals have been there for more than 20 years. Some of them are more experienced. So there's just a number of factors. But the fact of the matter is we're aware of the problem, and we're finding ways which don't wreck the system, but also enable us to do the right things.
So we're also getting a sense from this report that our teachers are spending less time actually teaching than our international counterparts. What are we doing instead of teaching?
And it's not the first time that you get the report, and I was quite surprised that it's even less than what we got ourselves when we were comparing ourselves with Botswana. We found that Botswana teachers spend more time teaching than the teachers. Then we had to investigate what are teachers doing that makes them really spend less time in the classrooms. And there were quite a number of factors. Some were studying, and that's why we had to even introduce a system to say, even if you're studying, you have no permission to leave during school hours. So after we did our comparison with Botswana, we instituted some measures, and I'm glad that it's even lesser, because at that time it was almost 45% when we compared to Botswana. So that it stands at 60%, it means we've made some progress. But as the SG officer was saying, that some of the issues, some of the problems that are there, that affects learning and teaching. It's also discipline in our schools. The teachers find themselves having to maintain order because we have a serious disciplinary problem in our schools, but also our systems are archaic. Our teachers are still using paper-based where they're supposed to be using ICTs. So they spend lots of their time doing administration because they're doing manually. So there are also big classes. So there's a number of factors. Some of them are out of our control, but we are going to look at those that are within our control and work with teacher unions to address them.
All right. One of the things that could be in your control is that not all the teachers have the subject knowledge for the subjects that they're teaching. How are you going to fix this?
It's also an exaggeration, really. I'm not saying we have a perfect system, but in the last few years, you'll be surprised. We've been through Funza Lushaga, we'll be getting very young, vibrant, bright kids coming from universities. So we're beginning also to attract into the sector young, qualified professionals to come into the system. And we really are doing relatively well if we have to compare ourselves from where we come from.
Are you getting the right candidates? This report talks about less than half of the teachers looking at teaching as their first choice.
No, funny, you should ask from every university. We are beginning, and I still want to really get more from these young people. We're beginning to find lots of young people choosing teaching as their first career. If you go into our schools, there's lots of young people who've chosen, and not because they couldn't go anywhere else, but they come into teaching as their first choice. I always make the example about, we have a collaboration with Teach South Africa. Every year they go and recruit young people for us. We've done engineering, accounting, just to say come and work in the sector for 3 years. And I tell you, they have opportunities elsewhere. Most of them don't leave. So as soon as young people get into the profession, that's what the report is saying, when they're inside the profession, they begin to appreciate and enjoy it.
All right, so we're going to start talking about the future just now, but perhaps from where you're sitting in your office and you're surveying the land, you get this report, you've done a few of your own internal reports. What's your assessment of the state of education in South Africa in 2019 compared to, let's say, 5 years ago when this last administration began its work? Are we better? Have we sidestepped? Where are we?
Peter, I can say with confidence, the system, we just say we're the system on the rise. All indicators are showing that we are on the rise, but I also don't want to create an impression that we are safe. It's a very fragile system. There's still lots of things that have to be consolidated, strengthened, so that this rise, there is no risk of it going down. So we're still a very fragile system. There's still lots of issues that we have to deal with. Your safety in the classrooms, management, discipline, efficiency also in terms of even your
use of
not
resources.
Only provincial but national also, and focus and attention from parents. Sometimes I just do feel that we leave too much to the system. And I always say, of the 365 days, we only have more than only 120 days with learners. Some of the things that we need to have to get right, we are reliant on what is happening in the community and happening at home. So to strengthen our school governing bodies, to help parents to pay more attention and know, and work with us on how to raise the children. So we're still in a very fragile situation, but what I can confidently say, we are definitely a system on the rise.
All right, so are our kids getting a good enough education to compete with the rest of the world? Is there a lot of work still to be done for us to be competitive so that we as parents send our kids through to the public school system and that we know that they're going to get a good education that's going to equip them?
Peter, we have areas where we are sure as a country we're extremely strong. On the curriculum, our curriculum compares with the best in the world. So we're very sure that which is the engine of the system is solid. We have lots of support that we get from institutions of higher learning, so which means we really have a very strong backing as a sector. But I also have to admit that there's still lots that needs to happen in the system. We still need to strengthen more and more our foundation in our intermediate phase. We need to support our learners more to stay at school. We're experiencing still very high dropout rates, which just say, yes, you can send your child to a school, but we're not sure if 12 years will still be with your child. So there's still lots of things that we need to really get right. But in terms of the quality, If we say your child has passed with a bachelor, she'll go anywhere in the world, they will pass. So our curriculum is solid, it's strong, it's good. But as I said, there are lots of issues that we still have to do to protect the other children who are not able to survive the system.
But there is this high failure rate of students. They get a matric exemption to get into university, and then they're struggling at university. There seems to be a huge gap between leaving school and starting university. Why is that?
No, it's international. In Zimbabwe, they have what, grade 0, grade 13, because schools are not necessarily preparing people for universities. That's why, and some, for instance, Minister Pandu was saying we have to do what other countries are doing, to have O levels, so that those who want to go and proceed to go to university, they're adequately prepared for universities. Because as a school, we're not necessarily preparing kids for universities. We're preparing them for the world, and therefore, if they want to go and specialize and be doctors, then let's focus them to be doctors. If they want to be accountants, let's do that. So there's, so you can't do more than this unless you want to break them. So what we're giving, it's international benchmark, it's adequate, but for them to succeed to other levels, other things have to come in place, which are not necessarily your basic education responsibilities or matters.
All right, before we look to the future, one thing that keeps coming up over and over again, and I'm sure you're tired of answering it, this 30% pass mark. Explain this to us.
And I promised by the end of the term, I told my officials, we're going to remove 30% because kids who pass with 30% are it's 0.03. So to really have to answer the 30% for less than 1%, I just don't think it's worth it for the integrity of the sector. It's so insignificant that I'm not sure why we're fighting over it. Because the fact of the matter is we're a public system and we have to provide for different abilities. So if we have children perhaps who have reached the limit in terms of their intellectual capacity, I don't appreciate why we should keep them in the system, because perhaps the slow learner, this is the best they could do. So give them a certification which says they operate at this level. You can take them knowing the following. But you can't go to university with 30%. University is 150 and 60%. So to really, and the majority of kids pass, as I say, 0 point something that passed with 30%. And then the majority of the 72%, even if we had to remove that, it will still remain 72%.
So the next 5 years, you, unlike some of the other ministers, have had the opportunity of putting the groundwork and doing some work already. What do you want to finish in the next 5, and what do you need to tick off in the next 5 years?
It's either I'm like you're unfortunate that I have to read my handover report of the things that I said the next administration should look into, which we had not addressed adequately. In that handover report, I said the new minister must focus on the foundation phase and the intermediate phase. Unless we can sort out your ECD, prepare and stimulate children adequately, deal with challenges much more earlier, then have a strong foundation in intermediate phase, we'll keep on struggling, as I say, having this fragile system. So that's what I said today in the handover report for the incoming MEC minister. So that's what we have to focus on. The next one, we have to focus on the infrastructure. We have to modernize our systems. Just this morning I was at the DBSA to say we can't go on the way we've been going on, where as national we receive money, we send to provinces and we have no control about what is happening, but still have to account for things we have no responsibility over. So I've spoken, even the new minister had said, set up a dedicated school infrastructure entity, which will help you to really improve the way we deliver. But for me, the biggest thing that in this administration we have to sort out, and so your ECD, your foundation phase, your intermediate phase, we have to strengthen the coordination between national and provinces so that when you make policies, you have a system of tracking it down to the classroom and feel that indeed it has reached. So sometimes there's just been a problem of coordination between national and provincial, but just in one word, the biggest thing for the next 5 years is to strengthen your lower grades. No, your ECD, foundation phase, and your intermediate phase. And if possible, start even having national assessments for those grades so that you can, the way we've been able to push at grade 12, use that same experience to say even at lower grades, let everybody take them as serious as we take our grade 12.
How do you manage the relationship with the teachers' unions, the SADTUs of this world? Because we've seen a lot of politics play out at the expense of the children.
I also think it's exaggerated. Teacher unions represent their members. They have to raise concerns with their members. If we've not paid the 0.1, they're supposed to scream the way they scream. If they have to negotiate for salaries, it's within, I think, their rights. But what I can't take away from our teacher unions, at the professional level, we've been working very well. We have what we call the teacher collaboration framework. We do teacher development and training with them. And from the Tally's report, one of the things I take away is that some of these interventions, professional support, professional intervention has happened. So I do expect that on and time and again we'll be having conflicts, we'll be fighting, we'll be arguing. But what I can say in the past 5 years, we had a very professional relationship when it matters most, around the classroom and around teaching and learning. So it's not as bad as it's presented. It's actually a healthy relationship.
How do we equalize the provinces so that I've got just as good a chance of getting through my matric in Eastern Cape as I do in Limpopo, as I do in Gauteng?
No, that's one of our biggest challenges, to be honest, because from where we sit, we can engage with province and say, do the following, and it just doesn't happen. And I sometimes feel completely discouraged because I don't appoint MECs, they don't account to me, so I can raise things with them to say, Eastern Cape, unless you rationalize your schools in a given time, you are not going to be able to provide quality education. If it takes the minister, the MEC 2 years, 3 years, can only complain to the Premier to say, we've instructed you long ago to rationalize schools because you're not going to be able to function with the current. So there are areas, as I say, your poor performing provinces, there are sometimes challenges, but I can't complain a lot because we have forums in which we sit through the ruling party, but it's a relationship managed elsewhere which you have no direct control over.
We're running out of time, unfortunately, but I was just wondering, and I've asked this before, I know I have, you know, there's some departments, I think, health, education, that are so important that perhaps they need to be defederalized. So in other words, that it's a national competency, national directives, and perhaps instruct the provinces rather than allow them to take charge?
You know, I have a 50-50 view around that when I look at provinces that perform, to say if it was at the center, some of these innovations, some of this energy you would have missed out. You see the energy that comes from Gauteng, it becomes a benchmark. That's why when Makuradin appointed him, I said, you're doing us down because we're using Gauteng's benchmark. If you see innovations from the Western Cape as a province. So the system is too important, too big, I think, to control centrally. What provinces must do, must appoint the best and monitor. But I find it, I'm 80% for the current structure. As I say, have this 20% that frustrates me when the current structure doesn't work. I mean, what happens in the Free State, we even take Free State directors to go and support directors in other provinces. So there's innovation that comes from provinces, there's energy, there's focus. So if you can take it center, so if something happens wrong here, it's going to affect the entire country. Right. So I just think, those are things that, because sometimes national is not necessarily the most efficient. I have problems myself sometimes with my office, the way they don't push, they don't do any certain things the way they're supposed to happen. So which means if you bring all these things, if there's a problem here, it's going to be a national problem. Whereas you have your 4 provinces that you don't even pay attention to. I never pay attention to Gauteng, to Western Cape, to Free State, and Northwest. It's only now with the intervention. But on their own, those provinces are carrying themselves. So you can use national support for other provinces that need your support.
All right.
Yeah, so it's for me, it's a good system.
Minister, thank you so much indeed for coming through and sharing your thoughts with us. And we wish you the best of luck. Our kids are relying on your 5-year plan. Thank you so much indeed. And we look forward to
our 5-year plan. So
yes,
no, thank you very much. Thanks, Doro. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to see you again at the top of the hour when we start telling your story right here on SA Today. Stay with us.